For this class, we'll be using Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator. In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator, how to tweak the preferences for digital illustration techniques. So if you've never worked in either software, this will be a good introduction. But if you have worked in Photoshop or Illustrator, I'll also be showing you how to set your preferences and customize your workspace for illustration techniques. So let's jump into Photoshop and show you what we're working with. Oh, by the way, even though I'm working in Photoshop, everything I'm about to tell you will also apply to Illustrator. So once you open Photoshop, you look in the far left-hand side. Here you'll see your toolbox. Inside the toolbox, you can click on the top and move it around, or you can click the little arrow and collapse it. But you'll find all the tools that we'll be working with. If you hover your mouse over them and hold it there for just a second, you can see the name of the tool. If there's a little arrow at the bottom right-hand side, you can click and hold on that tool and some additional tools will pop out. So for instance, the brush tool is also hiding a pencil tool or a mixer brush or other things. So if I ever ask you to work with a tool and you can't find it over in the toolbox, simply click and hold and it may be hiding underneath another one. Additionally, if you select a tool, pay attention to the tool options at the top of your screen. Tool options give you the ability to change how this tool acts and interacts with the pixels on your document. So if I select my brush tool, you can see I've got some different options that allows me to change the size and different types of brushes to choose from. But if I was to choose, say, an eyedropper tool, it has its own tool options to work with. You can only pull up these tool options if you have that tool selected. If you look above your tool options, you can see your drop-down menu. Now, we won't be using all of these menus, just some of the more common ones. Things like creating new documents and opening up certain workspaces or other palettes to work with. One of the more important ones is under Photoshop is your preferences. Preferences gives you the ability to customize how Photoshop kind of looks and feels. The more common one that I like to use is found in the general preferences. We'll open it up. This will open up our preferences palette. From here, you can see how your interactions with it will relate to each other. If you click on Interface, you can change the appearance or the color theme for this one. I'm working kind of on an older version. I like the lighter version, but sometimes you may want to choose a darker color theme. This will allow your colors to pop up and be a little bit brighter, and you won't be distracted by the lighter colors. Whatever works best for you is okay. I'm going to swap mine back to light. You can play around with the different other preferences, how your files are handled. The performance is also a nice one. If you're working on a laptop or a lower end computer, you may want to tweak the amount of memory that's being used so that it can run a little bit faster. Additionally, you may want to up the amount of history states, how much Photoshop can remember. Default is set to 20, but if you want to remember 40 or even more, you can do that as well. Once you've finished, we'll hit OK. This will bring us back into regular Photoshop. On the very far right-hand side are all of the palettes that we're working with. Palettes come in two different sizes. If you only see a little icon, you can click on it and it'll pop out and you can see the palette you're working with. You can see there's also the name of it. If I click on the icon again, it'll close it up. If I click on the little arrows at the top, that'll expand all of the palettes that are inside of there. And again, clicking on them will collapse them down. If you ever click on the name of a palette and drag it off, you can move those palettes around. You can also reorder what palettes are blended with each other. So if I wanted to make a whole palette of that, I can do that as well. If I ask you to open a palette that you can't find on the right-hand side, go up to the Window drop-down menu. All of these are the different palettes that Photoshop has available. If it's got a check mark beside it, that means the palette's open. But if you need to open a palette that's not open, simply choose it. So let's say I wanted to open my character palette. Clicking on that, now my character palette has been open. Additionally, docked with it, I see I've got my paragraph palette as well. If I need to close it out, again, I can either go to Window and I can either uncheck it or I can just close it out from here. The final thing you'll want to know is how to customize your workspace. Let's go back up to Window. down to Workspace, and you can see that Essentials is checked off. These are the default setting for Photoshop. It opens up some of the more commonly used palettes. If you've got a lot of palettes open and moved around, you may want to reset the Essentials. When I choose this, you can see my palettes pop back into place and everything is pushed back into order. And this is a great way of cleaning up your work area. But let's go back to the workspaces, and you can see there's a variety of different workspaces I can choose from. Each one kind of opens up palettes that are meant for working in that condition. The main one I like to work in when doing digital illustration is the painting setting. With painting selected, this will open up the palettes that I most frequently use. In other words, this will be my history palettes, my paintbrush palettes, all my brush presets, and even my color swatches and my navigator. If I wanted to further customize this, let's say there's a palette that I also want to have open. So I'm going to go to Window, and let's open up my character palette again. I like to have my character and my paragraph palettes open. I can move these around and change up their positions. I can save this new setting under Window, under Workspace. We can do New Workspace, and I'll give it my own name. So this is Ben's Workspace. This will also save any keyboard shortcuts or menu shortcuts that I've also created. We won't get into that. But when I say save, now under my workspace, Ben's Workspace is one of the areas that I can choose from. Even if I reset it back to Essentials, so this will open up different palettes from here, wherever I'm at, I can always go back to Ben's Workspace, and that'll open up all the other palettes that I want to work for. Take some time to customize your work area and also find where all the tools are and all the appropriate palettes. In the next video, we'll be looking at setting up some shortcuts for your Wacom tablet.